Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be taking a look at Snapship's Tactics and Star Wars X-Wing, two tabletop miniatures games that have some things in common as well as some key differences. And I want to compare and contrast these games in today's video because I feel like there's a lot that Snapship's Tactics offers the existing X-Wing community, and it's also going to ask you guys the question, do you think that Snapship's Tactics could be a replacement or even an upgrade for Star Wars X-Wing? We're going to talk about that in today's video, and I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I've been talking about Snapship's Tactics a lot lately and been playing it quite a bit, and it's definitely a game that has captured a lot of my interest. And while I will say that this is a sponsored video, big thanks to Snapship's Tactics for sponsoring this, it is a game that I do also really enjoy, and so it just seemed like a natural fit for this channel and for my X-Wing specific audience, but not just X-Wing. I think players of all types of miniatures games are going to like this game. There's a whole lot that appeals to me, and I think it could appeal to you guys as well. And if you want to learn more about Snapship's Tactics, I've done quite a few videos, including unboxings, how to plays. There's battle reports coming. So you can check links that are down in the video description below, or check out the little links that are going to be over on this side of the screen towards the end. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, there's obviously going to be some similarities that Snapship's Tactics and X-Wing has. Snapship's Tactics came from a line called Snapships that was toys, but when it was kind of put together as like these buildable ships that ended up becoming Snapship's Tactics, that turned into this whole miniatures game. It has a lot of similarities. I think X-Wing players will look at this and say, well, I definitely see some similarities. Like it's still a dogfighting game. It's still played on a 3x3 play area. It's still a points-based game where I have a number of points and I build a fleet to that number of points, and you build your fleet to that number of points, and we fight against each other. It's still moving and shooting. It still has dice. So it has a lot of those key things that are going to make existing players of games like X-Wing Armada even, and other, maybe even Star Trek Attack Wing, a lot of those type of games, it's going to feel very familiar to a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek and science fiction tabletop gamers. Anybody who's played dogfighting games, even some World War II dogfighting games, has a lot of that, those core components. So there's definitely a lot of those similarities, but that's not where the comparison and contrasting stops. It definitely has its share of differences. One key one is, well, it is not Star Wars. So if we're comparing it to X-Wing, I think one of the big things I got to point out is this is its own universe. This is its own IP. It is not Star Wars. So again, if that's one of the things that draws you into a game, if it has to be the IP and only the IP, then that's obviously something to think about. However, it doesn't mean that you can't certainly use the love of an IP to inspire building ships. You have a lot of flexibility when you're building these ships. Again, they are pieces. You don't have to build them like cut them off of a sprue. These are pre-painted pieces. They're already ready to go. You get to building them is part of the experience and half of the fun. So that's actually more of a positive aspect. But building them is fun, and you can use some of that creative imagination that you've been inspired from by Star Wars ships or even Star Trek ships. I had built a ship that looked a little bit like a Klingon bird of prey at one point. So you can definitely use that inspiration, but it's not going to build. It's not going to literally be an X-Wing or a TIE fighter or things like that. But it does also kind of give you the challenge of, I wonder if I could make something that sort of was inspired by a TIE fighter, and so there's definitely possibilities to do fun and clever things like that. Now, the size is another thing that is worth pointing out. Now, the ships from Snapships are larger. They are larger than typical X-Wing ships, especially X-Wings and TIE fighters and some of your small base ships, but they're a little bit more comparable to larger based ships. Definitely the base is still larger than a medium ship, but a lot more akin to some of the larger ships like Millennium Falcon, or here I show the Ghost, and of course like the Night Brother. we're showing we're the Mandalorian Gauntlet fighters. So the larger ships for X-wing are about the size of the ships for Snap Ships Tactics. It's important to point that out so you can get an idea of the scale of reference. But also at the same time, you typically run fewer ships. Like a standard game of Snap Ships Tactics is usually 2 ships versus 2 ships on the other side. And you can do that teams or individually, whereas a standard game of X-Wing is usually somewhere around 3 to 4, or even as high as 8 in some cases. So you can have a lot more ships with X-Wing and a lot fewer with Snap Ships. Now, if you want lots and lots of ships, that's something you can. Of course, you can go with higher point totals and higher ship counts for Snap Ships. But to play a standard game, that means that your buy-in is going to require less ships, and also the number of ships you have to manage and fly are fewer. You only have to worry about 2 ships and 2 ships worth of upgrades, and so that gameplay and that flow of the game can be a lot faster with a game like Snap Ships Tactics. And that's also the thing that's kind of talk about price. The price of core sets and the price of buy-in are a little different. Now, your price of your X-Wing core set is going to be a little on the cheaper side. I think it's currently the X-Wing 2-player starter. That initial core set is about $47.99. The Snap Ships Tactics is going to be a little bit more. I think there it's about $79 or so. And again, you can always find these a little cheaper. The starter box for Snap Ships Tactics, you can find it a little bit cheaper than that. I think it's currently on sale in the Snap Ships Tactics store. But I want to point out that you're getting an awful lot with that Snap Ships Tactics starter, whereas like an X-Wing core set, granted, you're getting 1 ship per side. In those, but each ship in the core set, for example, gives you 4 totally different chassis, so you can build that ship 4 different ways, and then also plus all the upgrades give you like limitless abilities. Now, both games have upgrades. The X-Wing, for example, you could run the X-Wing with proton torpedoes or without proton torpedoes, but this you can run 4 different ships. So the equivalent, I would say, would be sort of like if you had an X-Wing that could be converted to a Z95, that could be converted to a T-70 X-Wing, and then could also be converted to an ARC 170 or something like that, when they had different pieces to kind of turn that X-Wing into one of any of those 4 ships. And that's kind of like the equivalent for what you're getting in the Snap Ships Tactics starter. But also, for the different ships, you don't have to pick up as many. Again, you get 2 ships, you've got a fully standardized and a good size build to play in a regular game, an 8-point game typically. So like you don't need as much, but even though the buy-in is going to be a little bit more expensive up front, the overall cost ends up being a lot lower, and because of the lower ship count and also the extra variety you get per ship. I think that's worth pointing out. In each individual ship you were to buy, like X-Wing, I think it'll be a few dollars cheaper. And again, it depends on where you get stuff. Again, if you're only going with the card packs are only about $10 a piece. And I know some folks have pointed out that you can find the Snap Ships toy line in some places a little cheaper. Or if you want to just go to the Snap Ships store and buy the bundles, you can save a little bit there. So there's definitely places to try and, if money is a concern, there's ways that you can bundle and save. I have an entire buyer's guide for Snap Ships Tactics also, as well as buyer's guides for X-Wing that I've done throughout the years. And so you can always compare the 2 of those. But if cost is an issue long term, I think Snap Ships Tactics is going to be the cheaper option. Another thing that's a little bit different about these 2 are obstacles. While both games do have obstacles, I thought this was an interesting one worth pointing out, is that throughout the gameplay, obstacles are always kind of a negative thing in X-Wing. You do not want to hit obstacles. You want to steer clear of those, kind of place them in a way to hurt your opponents and hope that they land on them. But if you end up landing on them, that's really bad news. And the really cool thing about Snap Ships Tactics is the obstacles are beneficial. They are good things. Landing on an obstacle is going to give you something awesome, whether it increases your evasion, lets you shoot down enemy missiles as a bonus action, or removes extra heat or excess cubes from some of your devices, gives you extra power management, or gives you extra movement. So plus they can provide cover. So there's all kinds of benefits to all of the obstacles, and they're also double-sided. So when you're placing them, you're like, you know what? I'm running a lot of missiles. Let me place it so let me flip the asteroids upside down, so there's less anti-missile, obstacles out there. So it's even more strategic with the obstacle placement, and I think that that's a really cool thing. Another really, maybe the biggest difference between these two games is the power management. Power management is kind of what this game's mechanics really excel at. Every ship has a set number of power cubes that they start the game with. In this example here, it's the ship has 7 power cubes, and the power cubes are how you power your actions. You have some things that you can do for free, but to shoot your weapons requires power, and you have to do some power management. You're only going to be able to pull off 5 cubes every turn. So if you spend all 7 cubes, you're not going to have everything available next turn. Some actions also generate additional heat cubes, which means you're going to have even less. So if you can completely blow your load and spend all of your power and power as many things as you can on one turn, only to find out that on the next turn you can do hardly anything. And also, the more heat you have leaves you susceptible to critical hits, which can blow those up and cause fires and do extra damage to you. And it causes so many interesting situations where you realize, boy, I shouldn't have loaded a ship up with 4 cannons, because I realized I didn't have the energy to fire all of them. Or I could have one really cool turn where I fired everything, but then I was paying for that for the next 2 turns. So there's definitely a balancing act and interesting combinations with all of the different upgrades. And again, X-Wing has upgrades as well, so it's not, it's part of it's a comparison, because they do both have upgrades. There are upgrade symbols. It's going to be a very familiar process when it comes to X-Wing players coming over to Snapships or trying it out. You're going to see this is a very intuitive part that just feels right, feels natural. But the difference here is that you can do as many actions as you can afford on every given turn, which is a very cool thing. You can outfit a ship to have no guns if you wanted to. You can outfit a ship to have a maximum amount of guns, 3 or even 4 guns in some cases. So there's some really interesting possibilities on the ways that you can build, whether you want to focus on maneuverability, on firepower, on support, on launching missiles, or on ramming. There's all kinds of really cool things that you can do. And again, ramming is only a small part of the game, but it's cool the way it works. And but I like all of the different types of attacks that they have, and the power management ends up really being like a micro game within the game, and causes very, very interesting situations. So all in all, there are a lot, and there's other differences too. It uses the different types of dice. It uses numbered dice, but with some what are kind of specialized. It uses D10s, and it has a little bit of a similar to like a GW, like rolling this number and there being a modifier, so you need this number or higher, to hit. But there are not defense dice. So, but there is evasion, so it's kind of a static. Like, you basically, depending on all the modifiers, after you determine, all right, this person has cover, I've reduced their agility or their evasion by this number, and my weapon has this modifier on it. This is the number I need to roll. If I can meet that roll or meet that number with my roll, then that die will hit. Otherwise, it misses, and there's not much in the way of like defensive abilities that the defenders can do. There are some upgrades that will give you that ability. Hey, if you rolled a critical hit, I can make sure it goes here as opposed to somewhere else. So there are certain upgrades that give the defender a little bit of agency over what they're doing. But generally, is a lot less of that's left up to chance. So it's not like, oh, I rolled all these critical hits, but you rolled all evades, and now nothing happens. It's like, if you roll the critical hits, they are going to hit. So it's I think it's a little more satisfying with the dice. Although if you want some really interesting dice rolls, you should check out my next battle report because it is going to have some very interesting die rolls. But all in all, I feel like the gameplay is a little streamlined, a little more streamlined than X-Wing is now. I'm specifying now because I feel like X-Wing had a golden age years ago. Maybe before the Jump Master came out. X-Wing kind of blew up too quick, too fast. But for a while, the gameplay was really fun and really just felt more balanced and streamlined. And playing Snapship's Tactics reminds me of that time. Obviously, it has different mechanics and a new spin on the tabletop skirmish game with the whole toy aspect and building and the power management. But the fun factor does definitely feel like those early to mid days of X-Wing, which I think was kind of its golden age. It definitely reminds me of that, and it feels really good. And so hopefully you guys are interested in it. If you want to learn more, I'm going to have some more videos linked over here on the side. There's a playlist for Snapship's Tactics here on the channel. You can check that out, and I'll put links in the video description below. I want to hear from you guys, though. What do you think is the golden age of tabletop skirmish games? What are some things that you look for in a dogfighting game or in a sci-fi spaceships game? And what are features that really reach out to you? Because that's stuff that I definitely want to hear. If there's any specific types of videos too that you're looking to see, let me know down in the comments. And if you have any questions, you can ask them down there, or you can also jump in our Discord. Links for that are in the video description below as well. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this whole channel possible. So thank you for your continued support. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Always wash your socks and have a great day.